welcome all of you. We are here today, as you had mentioned, we are a proud father-daughter team here at Shorr Solutions, along with the amazing team that we have with us. And we know that 2020 can be described both with four-letter expletives. I've heard the word dumpster fire before. I had a colleague yesterday that asked if they could just have a free trial subscription of 2021 before they sign up for the full thing. So at this point, we are ready as an industry, as a community, we're ready to look ahead to 2021. So you are obviously not alone when we look at what the heck has been going on this year, but we're really happy. We come to you with strategies, Shorr strategies, if you will. So that's what we're going to do today. Is we're really going to talk about looking ahead to 2021 and how we can go ahead and really get started. So Jay, do you want to go ahead and kick this one off?
Sure. Medicine is a science, whether it's the biological science, whether it's the physical science, it is a science. And in the aesthetic, cosmetic, or even in the internal medicine, any other field of specialty, it is a way to heal the sick and injured. In our aesthetic, cosmetic, and surgical business, it is a way to keep our patients looking young and beautiful. After all, the aesthetic, cosmetic, fee-for-service, beauty, cash business is a way to keep us looking young and beautiful, from the outside, most importantly on the regenerative medicine side, from the inside. Because when you look better, don't you feel better? Doesn't your car drive nicer when it's clean? I mean, I say that as a joke, but that's the way people feel. Medicine is still one of the most respected professions today. I didn't say the most. It could be challenging. It is one of the most, because I think a lot of our first responders, and especially what we've gone through, what we've just, essential workers are one of our most, if not the most respected professions today. And I'm glad to see that they finally have gotten the recognition that they truly deserve. They may not be the highest paid, but they sure are the most essential that are keeping us alive today. But it's one of the most respected professions today because you need to go through 4 years of college, traditional 4 years post high school, then 4 years of medical school. I don't care whether it's allopathic, amyopathic, osteopathic, podiatric, chiropractic, all right? And then in the aesthetic, cosmetic, and the surgical field, you have to go through maybe an internship and then a residency. In the plastic surgery field, you'll go through a 5-year traditional surgical residency, maybe a combined surgical residency, and then another plastic surgical residency and or fellowship. So you understand that all this education that people have to go through, but in our world, please don't ever lose sight of the fact that medicine is a business. I am on adjunct faculty at Florida Atlantic University here in Florida. And you know, it's very interesting is what I teach is business of medicine. And as brilliant as our physicians and our nurse practitioners and physicians assistants and all of our medical assistants and estheticians are, as brilliant as they are scientifically, they never go through business training. And then you want them to go and they open up a business and they have no idea on how to run a business. And it's Mara and Jay Shorr that bring you Shorr Solutions.
Well done, Jay. Well done. So let's review how we're going to help you bring back more patients in 2020. So we want to talk about some strategies. We're going to give you some tips and tricks that you can actually take today and start putting into place. If you have any questions, as we talked about, we are here for you. We'll put our contact information in the very last slide so you're able to contact us later. But let's review a few tips and tricks. So, outbound calls. Okay, we are going to get started talking about outbound calls. Now, there's a couple things we want to keep in mind is that you need to make sure, number one, you're making them. Number two, you're pulling the lists, right? But you want to make sure that everything is very clearly scripted. So when I talk about outbound calls, I'm going to talk about who, meaning who on your team should be making them. And then I'm going to talk about who, as in the patients to call. So we want to make sure You put that person on your team that is able to get the appointments made and they're able to freely and comfortably speak with patients. That's the person or people in your practice that you want making these calls to patients. Now, I've heard people say, oh, well, there's nobody else that can do it. So the person at the front desk that you have, that we like to call your director of first impressions, that person is able to do it. The provider themselves, there is nothing wrong with the provider themselves making these we miss you calls. And honestly, you want to make sure you're thinking, even though, look, we love when people hop on the phone, we love when they're willing. If somebody is so uncomfortable that it's just not going to work, or you take somebody in your office that, for example, does only billing, that's all they do, and they like being behind the scenes, you can't expect the same results as somebody that loves interacting with patients. So we have team members on our team they love making phone calls, and that's amazing. So when we look at who we're going to call, I'm going to give you a bit of a calendar, right? We want to be pulling lists from our software. We want to be looking at patients that haven't been back in 1 month, patients that haven't been back in 3 months, patients that have been back in 4 months, and then 6 months. And if you had surgical patients that came in for a consult even last year, call them. If your practice is conducting surgery, I want you to go ahead and call them. Jay, can you talk for just a second? Although, I mean, I know what just a second means. Let's talk about the importance of having set scripts for these team members who may not have been accustomed to making outbound calls. What is the importance of having set scripts for practice members to use, team members to use?
Well, I always say that set scripts are done because you always see websites. One of the main things, there's a term out there, FAQ. All right.
Mhm.
And
Which
everybody,
stands for?
and that's for frequently asked questions. And the importance of that is when you have a set script, use the set script as if you were going to be asked that question if you were the patient being called. For example, I have a set script, and when we write web copy for our clients to go onto their existing site or a new site, we want to write copy that the other speak to a listener in a language they understand. So the set script is done to eliminate 100 back and forth questions. So figure out what is it that the other person probably would want to know so that you can shorten the amount of time that you have that dialogue with them that will answer the questions, because then it makes you become the expert. Wow, they were in my head. They were thinking what I was going to ask, and it can always lead you in to FAQ, the frequently asked questions, which you also should have the answers for. That set script should be in those frequently asked questions.
And there's very specific questions we want to make sure to address, and there's very specific items that you want to make sure that team member is able to address. You want to make sure they're able to address, especially because we're talking about today's climate, what are the safety changes that have been made due to COVID? So have them emphasis not just the amazing work that the providers provide, not just all of the experience. They know this. We're talking about calling back patients that have already been to see you. So you're not selling the patient on the practice. You want to explain how safe the practice is and why that patient should come in now. So you want to talk about the safety features. You want to explain how much your practice has done and why the patient should come in now. You want to talk to them about the fact that we have put XYZ in place. You can see these resources on our website. You can tell them. We do, you can say, happen to have an appointment next Tuesday at 3 p.m. And I know how much you love your mid-afternoon appointments. So explain that to them and have that time on the calendar already ready to go, right? We want to make sure that we're already ready to go.
Mara, I want to interrupt for 1 second. So one of the things, the reason people might be saying, well, why should I call plastic surgery practices from a year ago? Well, there's two reasons for it. They may have already had the
Patients, you mean, not practices, but patients.
patients.
Mhm.
Yes, they may have already had that procedure. That is very possible. Let's say they didn't. Now you're going to give them every reason why to come back. But even if they did, this is the perfect opportunity. People say, no, I don't want to recall people that I've spoken to and they didn't come back to me. This, you may have introduced newer procedures, and you know all the time, there's always a newer dermal filler. There's always a different neuromodulator. There's a different radio frequency device. There might be a different CO2 device. You may be doing vaginal rejuvenation or hormonal male-female health. All right, this might give a reason to at least speak to people and let them know what else that you're doing that you may not have been doing before.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And another thing which ties in very nicely actually to the slide that we just put up on email marketing is that this is going to give you the opportunity to update their email address. So when you're making these outbound calls, because in the past year, in the past 6 months, even 3 months, jobs may have changed. So with that, we want to make sure that we're updating their email account. Now, that is also going to help with a couple things. Number one, it's going to help with the automated appointment reminders, which helps decrease with no-shows, of course, the automated email reminders that are coming out from Solution Reach. So want to make sure knowing that Solution Reach really syncs really, really well with your EMR. So you're going to be able to automatically have that syncing. When you're sending out email marketing, that's the beauty, is that the email marketing does sync directly with your practice management system as long as you have it all set up correctly. I encourage you to do this because you're going to be able to not only send out automated appointment reminders, but the calls we just talked about, you can also automate those through Solution Reach. So I encourage you to automate texts, emails, as well as make those phone calls. So now when we're looking at email marketing, we have people ask us, well, how often should I be doing it? What makes sense? What doesn't make sense? I would say 1 to 2 times per month. You're going to get, if you try and send something out every week, a lot of times people think, but there was such a great special and it did so well. So now I'm going to do one every week. You're going to start to see list fatigue. So you want to make sure you really are avoiding list fatigue 1 to 2 times per month. And your person that you work with, they can help you set up a template if you don't have one already. You want to make sure you're including really well-crafted content so that you're sending information that an injectable patient might be interested in to injectable patients and so on. And make sure you're sending out marketing and email marketing specifically targeted. You're not trying to sell them on the practice for the first time. Again, you're trying to get them to come back. So we want to make sure that that is the focus. And of course, you want to make sure, Jay has always taught me, we said we're a father-daughter team, so we're going to say, honestly, y'all, from when I was a little girl, it was a matter of making sure you do things by the numbers. So, and your numbers have to be right, and then you have to look and see what worked, what didn't work. So, Jay, do you want to talk a little bit about shifting strategy when it comes to analyzing the numbers, and how often do you recommend analyzing numbers?
The difference between last year, this year, and next year are going to be totally different because the analysis that you're going to get from them, unfortunately, are going to be drastically different. I'm a former practice owner, by the way. You know, we had a very, very large multi-unit, multi-surgeon, multi-million-dollar practice, and I used to analyze our numbers at least monthly. I was doing the P&L monthly, all right, and then I would do
And
month.
P&L stands for?
That's the profit and loss. All right. I didn't wait until the accountant asked for the information to bring it to you because I wanted to know I may not be able to do anything about the numbers that are already passed other than analyze them to where am I askew. If I have a certain percentage of ratio, my advertising marketing should be X% to revenue. My payroll should be X% to revenue. I have my fixed costs. I have my variable costs. That's the science of financials of your business. But what you can't measure, you can't manage. All right. And if you don't know what your numbers are, your accountant will just be giving you information predicated on the information that you give back. And that's why you'll see on your tax return that your accountant usually will state that these are not audited numbers, but based on the information presented.
And Jay, you're talking about financials now. You're not talking about email marketing numbers. Your accountant obviously doesn't have
Oh,
anything to do with
well,
your email marketing numbers.
your email marketing numbers, I analyzed every email blast
Yeah.
because I wanted to know not necessarily what's working. I want to know what's not working because,
And a couple examples of things you want to look at. You want to look at your open rate. So what percentage of people are actually opening your emails? You want to look at what your click-through rate is. So what percentage of people are actually clicking on the links back to your website? And what percentage of people are actually picking up the phone to call? How many are choosing to schedule an appointment now? Look at all of these things, and you want to then analyze. And if you need some assistance analyzing, there's experts. Absolutely turn to the experts to help do that.
um, the click-through rate to me is
Mhm.
probably one of the more important things to analyze because there is a home page and there's a landing page. And if you're going to market something and it brings them right to the specific thing you're marketing, and then they click out. And how much time did they spend on it? If they spent no time at all, yes, they opened it. That's important. But then they didn't get anything and it didn't help you with having them get to the rest of your site. I love it when I look at it and people click to other things on my website. At least I know that they have some clue about what else we do other than the specific item that we just marketed in that email blast.
Although, and that's where, yes, you want to make sure that you're not taking them only to the homepage if you want them to look at your neurotoxin before and afters and you want them to schedule neurotoxins. That's where I would say make sure that you have pages on your website and links on your website that encourage them to go from place to place. But remember that the goal is to schedule an appointment, right? So we always want to make sure that the goal is to schedule an appointment. And one of the other things I talked about with the importance of taking this time to make sure your data is clean in your EMR system, and therefore it will be clean in Solution Reach. So making sure that the phone numbers you have on file are current for your patients. So they didn't, for example, have a work cell phone number and now they don't work with that employer anymore. So therefore they have a different cell phone number. So we want to make sure that we're taking the time, especially right now, to be able to contact our patients, whether it is if there is another shutdown in the future, whether it is to send out automated, like we can see on the screen, those automated text, things that are really syncing with your EMR. So by updating your EMR, you're also updating that data in Solution Reach. And so turn on the automations, guys. I would say that the automations are going to make your life so much easier.
I always love to be contacted, even when it tells me that I have an appointment with Mara. I have a webinar to produce for Solution Reach, and it is tomorrow, and that it is 2 hours from now. And I will tell you personally, I get mentally kidnapped between 2 hours and 15 minutes before. I know I have a meeting to do. I know I have a doctor's appointment. It's in 2 hours, it's in an hour, and I get kidnapped. And another email comes on, or another phone call happens. And next thing you know, I'm getting a text from Mara that says, "We're waiting for you on the line." And I'm still on with somebody else.
Jay, you're not alone in that. I will share that you're certainly not alone in that. And I think that during COVID, it has gotten worse in regards to people losing track of time of day,
What day of
day
the
of the
week?
week. Exactly. What day of the week is it? I can't believe that we're days away from November already. So in my head, it must be June. So I think that as we look at that, you want to make sure that, so we're talking now about the automated text message reminders. I would suggest when we're talking about bringing patients back that haven't been back in 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, that yes, you can send out automated text, but also make those calls. For patients that have appointments on the calendar already, I really would suggest setting these automated text message reminders and having it be, it can be 1 week before, one day before, the morning of, And then if it needs to be 30 minutes before, look at how far your patients travel from, as far as what sort of distance. If they all come within, 5 minutes, then send it half an hour before. If everybody drives half an hour to come see you, send it for an hour, hour and a half before. So because we're all getting, like Jay said, with our time, we're all getting kidnapped. So
Not only do
um,
I love the reminder of an hour, 2 hours a day before, I love even more the appointment confirmation text that may be sent
Mhm.
to me a week before that says
Correct.
reply Y, yes, N, no, C, cancel. And you know what? I may have even forgot because I may not have looked. And I know, having had a practice and dealing with dozens of clients like we're dealing with this, the patients may not even remember it's on their schedule. I look at my schedule a week, 2 weeks from now, but you know what? It goes right over my head. As a
Right.
matter of fact, it went so close to my head that it took all the hair off of my head. Okay. But
Nice
I,
one, Jay.
so, it's very interesting that you need to know that reconfirm that appointment because
Right.
it gives the practice the opportunity to know that you really responded, that you're going to show up.
So, next up, what I would say is that we want to make a point of working with your vendors to see how they're supporting practices right now. So, if you are already a Solution Reach customer, I would truly make a point of hopping on the phone and asking them, are there different pieces of technology that have been launched since COVID, and take the time now to do a demo. Ask their rep what other people, what other practices are doing during COVID, using Solution Reach in creative ways that you could turn some of these options on or get really creative with them. Outside of that, call your other vendors and ask, and we work with clients that we do this all the time, what sort of specials are they running due to COVID, and how can you take advantage of them? Are the injectable companies or some of those vendors offering coupons and rewards, if you will, which they have at certain point this year? I'm not going to say who's done what, but we know that certain vendors have done certain things that patients, benefits directly the patient, that maybe you can increase the marketing or they can help you market it. You want to look at, have they produced new marketing materials that have come out in really creative ways? Are there certain vendors that may say, look, I'm going to push your payment back 1 to 2 months because your office was closed? We know of several vendors that did that. They were really, really wonderful. And you want to make sure you're looking at that to see how each of them are supporting. Now is a great time, honestly, to check in with your credit card processing company and find out how they're able to help you lower your rates on your credit card processing rates. And if you have any questions, I mean, we can help you with any questions you have related to that. We do this all the time with our clients, but really working with your vendors. Jay, you've been a lean, mean vendor contacting machine, I feel like, since, I mean, always, but really since COVID. And I think one of the great things is that because you know who's been able to assist with what and who maybe won't be quite as happy to budge. But I've seen you nonstop
Um,
doing this.
First of all, be very careful. This is nothing against vendors, by the way. We support the vendors because it's the vendors who support the conferences. However, we are practice management consultants, not vendor management consultants. And this is not a sales pitch, but our role and our goal is to help the practice not only make money, but save money. Understand something. Every dollar that you generate, if you're lucky, you'll get 30, 35% on a dollar as profit. Many practices are getting much less. But every dollar that you save in your business is a 100% margin dollar. You save a dollar, it is a dollar's profit. You generate a dollar, it might be 20, 30, 35 cents profit. Some of you may make less, some of you may make more. However, there are certain common things that every practice needs vendors for. Equipment, supplies. I would hold off unless the deals are so sweet in capital type of equipment, all right, because you may not have the demand to be able to pay off some of these things, especially if you're financing it. But there's vendors like credit cards, patient financing. Now is the best time for you to renegotiate your credit card financing. And I will share with you that probably a half a dozen within this last month we've done analysis for and have been able to shave off 20 to 30% off of credit card fees because you really don't know how credit card fees are generated. And if you go from 25 basis points to 20 basis points, you save like 20%. All right. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot.
Yeah, Jay, I just want to come back to something else. I'm going to come back even to something that you had said earlier, and going right along with that theme is that there's really two things that are going to affect the bottom line. And if we look at how we can have vendors help with that, it is either are we negotiating a lower rate? So whether that is a lower percentage rate, a lower interest rate, a lower, just a lower rate of that is paying, or can you get more with what you're already paying? So that's
Exactly.
where, simple things like if you look for, and I use Solution Reach as an example, that if you say, well, I have Solution Reach to do just my automated reminders, but then I have another vendor, whether it's Constant Contact or MailChimp or one of those that has my email, right? And that's where I do my email marketing. If you combine and use, and I'm just using this as one example, have Solution Reach use and do your email marketing, that's going to save you. Constant Contact can be anywhere from 500, or I'm sorry, 50 to $100 per month for a subscription for most people. So if you're able to save 600 or $1,200 a year, why not start with something so simple that you're already paying for, right? So let's look at small things and simple things. It might be that it eliminates you from, it eliminates other software, I should say. Another simple way for you to really create the best customer experience, which leads to people coming back again and again. People at this point, a lot of people are already wary of coming into an office, going out in public, and you want to make sure this comes back to creating the best possible experience for your possible callers when they're in your office, but also before they get into your office and after they leave. So, Jay, you always talk about the power of a smile, right? We always talk about that. And you can hear somebody, whether or not somebody is smiling when they're on the phone. And that's the key. So giving them the FAQs and right, Jay, I mean, you could hear if I'm smiling or not. You could hear if I'm passionate or not. So,
Yeah, I always say, and also you're never an interruption of anybody's time when you have something interesting to say. I mean,
mhm.
I know whether somebody's going to bore me in the first couple of minutes. It's the monotone of their voice, it's the inflection of their voice, it's whether I can hear the smile, the smile. You call a doctor's office, and as doctor's office can you hold? I mean, you didn't even make me feel comfortable. I'm sorry to have bothered you. And the power of the smile, there's the old expression, how to get somebody to smile is to smile at them. And I have to give a shout out. I have to give a shout out
Yes,
to
yes.
Dr. Rich Castellano, who is the smile doctor. Now, many of you know him. For those of you who don't, he's got practice profitability. It's not a shout out for the market, it's PPMD. We lecture for them, but it's all about positivity and how to capture leads and how to do the right thing. And it truly is. He's got a call center where, and I worked in his office as a consultant 3 days a week for 10 months. And I will share with you, they had a call center that called people all day long to regenerate and to generate leads. And the power of positivity is all in that smile.
So you want to make sure that you're creating the best experience possible for that caller. So that includes answering with a smile, cutting down on hold and wait time. You want to make sure that you have those frequently asked questions prepared for every member of your team. So incoming and outbound calls, they have those frequently asked questions. and you want to make sure the data is being put in correctly. So we, and we work with practices all the time that are struggling with this. So we see this all the time, and there really is a wonderful formula that you can implement. And if you give your team those tools, they are absolutely going to be able to use them and absolutely be able to soar. So you want to make sure you're creating a strong sales program once your patients call you or once you have them on the phone. So Jay, can you talk and give, if you could give maybe 2 minutes of what a great sales program looks like for patients once they're actually in the office, because this is another thing that's going to keep them coming back for more, and that's going to really help people ramp up in 2021. So we always talk about the 4 closing questions. So in addition to everybody on the team having a smile and being efficient in that front desk area, what are those 4 closing questions that will make for a strong sales program in a practice?
Well, let me backtrack for 1 second. It really, to me, a lot of times it is the power to upsell the upsell. When the patient is in your reception area and your director of first impressions is speaking to the people, or you have somebody that can come out and speak to the patient prospect, it's always about what are their interests. They may be here for something, but I've never gone into a clothing store and bought a suit without somebody trying to sell me a shirt and a tie. All right. It's like a woman going in to buy something without somebody saying, well, what kind of earrings are you wearing? What kind of makeup? The makeup's going to go to the color of the suit that or the skirt you're wearing. So, but you have to ask those questions. That's part of a sales program. So the 4 questions are,
And everybody, I encourage you to write these down. We don't have a slide on these in particular, but these are really, really good questions. So I encourage you grab a pen and write these down now. So go
are
ahead, Jay.
these are the 4 questions. Number 1 question, how long have you been thinking about having this procedure? And you pause and you wait, oh, a long time, or I've just been thinking about it. The next question is, how would it make you feel if you had this procedure? Naturally, it's going to make me feel great because it's been about, oh, it's probably been going on 9 months since I've had my Botox. And I'm not going to bend my head and I'm not going to raise my eyes because I don't want anybody on this call to see it. Okay. But I haven't had my Botox because I haven't been to a provider. All right. So, how long you've been thinking about this procedure? How is it going to make you feel? Next, powerful, powerful question. What is stopping you from making that decision to go ahead and have that procedure? I don't care if it's a laser hair removal, a Botox, or a physical surgery. And then lastly, that's a great question to ask the doctor, the nurse, the licensed esthetician. Do not, do not, if you are not a licensed provider, engage in the practice of answering medical questions. You are ill trained, you may be trained, but you are not licensed in the scope to answer medical questions. You can give an opinion, you can share how it made you feel. Do not say, well, the doctor will give you 5 milligram Valium, even though that's what they give everybody. You don't know what the patient might be or might not be allergic to. So, how long have you been thinking about it? How will it make you feel? What's stopping you from making the decision? And that's a great question to ask the doctor.
Perfect. And I really encourage you, utilize these 4 questions in your consults. You can use them even before that patient arrives that day, but that's really going to help you in your sales program. You also really want to make sure that you have, so we've talked about the power of the phone call in the beginning. We've talked about what should happen when they come in. Everybody's greeted with a smile, that you review the safety, you are giving them this other areas of concern worksheet for them to fill out. It could be paper, it could be electronic, whatever your practice is comfortable with, so that the provider then knows these are the other things that they're thinking about. You talk to them during the consult. We've talked about how that consult goes. You want to make sure you have a drip campaign at the very end. So if they choose not to book that day, that you know exactly how often and when you're contacting them, and making sure that whether they book or not, they end up in your email marketing system. And we talked about the power of that email marketing system. So the goal of today was really just to give you strong framework that you're able to use to put into place. So for those of you that are looking, these are, again, we did have a slide on them after all. So these are the magical closing questions. So we want to make sure that we're including all of that. We talked about coming up with the drip campaign. I know you guys have the handout, so you are able to really look at how often and when we keep that patient. When I talk about a drip campaign, you want to follow up with them, and I really would alternate between phone, email, text, unless they tell you that this is the best way to get a hold of them. Sometimes people say, look, I've been calling the patient and calling and calling and calling. Well, they might respond better to text. There's people out there that, Jay, for instance, says, I don't want you texting me. I don't want you just emailing me. Pick up the phone and call me. So you want to look at how is that patient, how do they like to be contacted, so that your drip campaign is going to have the best rate of success. So we've talked about that. You want to make sure you're maintaining a really strong social media presence, but make sure it reflects 2020, okay? What do I mean when I say this? Look at the photos that you're using. Make sure that they include people with masks versus people that don't have on masks. Okay, look for things, because if you shot stock footage in 2019, it's going to look very, very different. So we also want to look at things like safety. Are we promoting safety, and all the different ways that your practice is really implemented? Honestly, sanitizing doorknobs is never, I did not think that would be a social media marketing tip for 2020, but I mean, it's, what do we, with Jay, there was what, murder hornets at the beginning of this year, and I didn't think that'd be a thing. So
Yeah, it used to be out of sight, out of mind, but I like knowing that when I receive something, it is not out of sight, it is put in my mind. And that might be the separation and distance of what makes me want to buy, because it makes me feel that there are precautionary measures all in place. Now, look, we went through several months of webinar daily updates, daily of protocols and what you should do to COVID. Apolitical aside, COVID is here, all right? And it will be here going into 2021. I don't want to even get into politics of it. It's just going to be here, just like we know the flu, the general flu, comes every winter. It's just a way. Keep people in the know. But I want to go back one step even, and all of this starts from the moment that the patient walks in your door. And I can't tell you how many times we've been in site visits. Amara, you do a lot of training with staff.
we do.
Don't
Yes.
ever let it start the genuineness. When a patient walks in your door, that director of first impressions that's sitting behind that desk is truly your director of first impressions. Don't let that person open the door and you're still sitting there as they're walking up to your counter. Greet them like it is your home, because for goodness sakes, this is your home. And don't ever let a patient leave your office without having somebody escort them out of the door and thank them for being a part of your family today.
And you want to make sure you're doing this in a very 2020 way. So where we used to say get up and shake their hand, you don't want to do that anymore. You want to make sure that you're still staying 6 feet away, and open the door with a Clorox wipe or something that will make them feel more comfortable. So, but you want to make sure you're maintaining a social presence, and one that really reflects 2020. I do encourage you to stay out of politics, out of religion on social media. That's just something that we recommend to our clients. So finally, this is our final tip, but we started talking about this in the beginning, and we're going to end this presentation with this tip, but make sure you're tracking your results. Jay talked about the importance of regularly evaluating those numbers. So look at your open rates. Look at how many patients, how many calls are you making outbound to patients? And I encourage you, track all of it. How many outbound calls did each person make, and what was their success rate? So how many actually booked the appointments? And then analyze, does one team member book more than the other? Does another say that, look, the conversations are longer, but they have a higher rate? Or do shorter conversations work better? Look at what is working, everything we talked about today, and evaluate the data, track everything, and remember to evaluate, because especially if you have garbage in, garbage out, people say, oh, it takes too long to track the data or create a spreadsheet or mark it in my practice management system. But that means you're not going to have the data to review when you're recreating and redoing your plan.
If you don't know how to do it, invest in professionals who do. I would not have my orthopedic surgeon controlling my cholesterol. All right. And you get my message. I usually try to hire professional people in my world that can help me get the jobs done in the shortest amount of time with the greatest amount of result. And that's what I really ask you to do. If you don't know how to do it, if you don't know what you need to do, hire people that at least can get you started and send you on your way. That I promise you will get you going, getting ready for 2021.
It will. So I encourage you to go see. We have a lot of free resources on our website. So you're able to check that out at shoresolutions.com. You're able to give us a call. We love when you pick up the phone. You can also send us an email or follow us on the socials. So
Thank you, everybody.
bye.